Ships from around the world have docked in Charleston, South Carolina since the 1600s. But residents now say the city's historic port is maybe a bit too welcoming, especially when it comes to giant cruise liners.
Early show contributor Taryn Brill went to Charleston to check it out for us this morning. She joins us here right now.
Good morning to you both. Well, Charleston is world-renowned as one of America's most beautiful cities, but it's also very small, and preservationists believe the giant cruise ships that dock there might be endangering the city's historical status.
In Charleston, South Carolina, America's soil and sea converge like no place else. The colonial city's southern charm has been maintained by 4 centuries of Charlestonians who share a collective sense of self-preservation and pride.
A visitor came here from France, and he said, "This is the most beautiful city between New York and Lima."
But for residents like Dana Beach, some days are more beautiful than others. He sees a new threat along the old waterfront. In fact, it's hard to miss.
It's essentially a floating town. There are towns in South Carolina that are a lot smaller than this ship.
It's a giant cruise liner, and before the year is over, an estimated 87 of them will dock in Charleston's harbor, just steps away from the city's historic district.
Instead of looking out to the water, as you would ordinarily do, if this ship is here, this ship looms larger and taller than any building in downtown Charleston.
Charleston may be a port, but Evan Thompson, who runs the city's Preservation Society, says these boats are simply too big.
When you look at the waterfront from a historic point of view, most of the ships are of a much smaller scale.
Thompson also fears air and water pollution, along with increased traffic from the 2,000 passengers who descend upon the city from each ship. He helped nominate the city for the National Trust's Most Endangered List. It didn't make the cut, but Charleston was placed under watch status for fear that any more ships might jeopardize the historic character of the city.
Our building, we have to power wash every 2 months to get the soot off of it from these smokestacks.
We're not trying to run ships out of town. We're trying to establish reasonable limits. We limit the number of people in walking tours. We limit the number of pedicabs on our street and our carriages. Every little minute aspect of tourism is managed, and yet this is totally unregulated.
Mayor Joe Riley says there's a simple explanation for that.
The city doesn't have the power, the legal power, to regulate the waterside activities of the State Ports Authority.
He also insists that the cruises are in no danger of damaging Charleston.
The National Trust, I think, just made a big mistake. They're wrong. It's in perfect scale, it's in correct balance, and it's good for the city.
Plus, he says, they're keeping people employed.
The cruise business creates jobs, from the longshoremen working on a waterfront to the people who service the ships, to the jobs created in our remarkably beautiful downtown and the market area.
I sell Charleston's Benny wafers.
Dolores Hammerlin has been a vendor in Charleston's open-air market for 18 years.
I just enjoy having tour ships in town. It helps all the businesses down here in Charleston.
New ships.
And are they buying?
And they buy, and they buy, and they buy.
But what's good for business isn't necessarily good for the city. Although the mayor insists that the Port Authority and its cruise lines have their own strict environmental standards, some residents want more than just blind trust.
We need to be able to, as a community, go to City Council if this gets out of hand and say, look, let's tighten the limits.
Do you think the locals here in Charleston would like to sink the ships if they could?
No. If we could simply get a handle on the number of visits, the amount of impact, everybody would be very happy with the ships.
Guess time will tell. But again, Charleston's mayor emphasizes that ships are regulated by the State Port Authority, not the city. But the two sides have agreed that the number of cruise ships will not exceed 104 per year, which, by the way, he doesn't see happening anytime soon. And as he puts it, of the 4 million visitors they have to Charleston annually, only about 200,000 are cruise ship passengers. So he doesn't see it as overwhelming, the mayor.
And I think a lot of the local businesses probably beg to differ, like they mentioned. I mean, it's nice to have tourists. They do spend money, and you can't beat that.
About $30 a day, these tourists off the ships. So.
It's a good amount, especially in this economy. Yeah. Two very distinct camps on that. Taryn, thanks.
Thank you.